The rifle clattered to the pavement for the third time, and the crowd held its breath, but no one expected the weathered man in the back to rise from his wheelchair and show them what honor really looked like. The ceremony had begun with such promise. The morning sun cast long shadows across the memorial plaza where 100 citizens had gathered to honor fallen soldiers on Veterans Day. A high school honor guard stood at attention, their pressed uniforms crisp, their faces painted with determination. They were young, maybe 17, 18 at most, and this was their moment to prove themselves worthy of carrying the tradition forward. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. The lead cadet, Marcus, gripped the ceremonial rifle with white knuckles. He had practiced the routine 1,000 times in the school gymnasium. But here, under the weight of 100 watching eyes and beneath the engraved names of the dead, his hands betrayed him. The rifle slipped during the first spin. He caught it awkwardly, his face flushing crimson as whispers rippled through the crowd. His squad leader shot him a glance that could have cut steel, and Marcus reset his stance, sweat beading at his temples despite the cool November air. He tried again. This time the rifle made it through to rotations before wobbling free from his grasp, striking the concrete with a sound that echoed like a gunshot across the silent plaza. Someone in the crowd gasped. A woman covered her mouth. Marcus bent to retrieve the rifle, his movements mechanical, his eyes glazed with humiliation. That's when the old man stirred. He sat in the back corner of the gathering, nearly invisible in a worn wheelchair. His name was Frank Callahan, though most people in town simply called him the Colonel. He was 83 years old, with hands gnarled by arthritis and a body that trembled when he tried to stand. His daughter, Claire, stood beside him, one hand resting protectively on his shoulder. "Dad, please," Claire whispered as she felt him shift forward. "Don't." But Frank was already moving. His weathered hands found the armrests, pushing down with surprising strength. His legs shook as they took his weight, and for a moment it seemed he might collapse. But then something ancient and unbreakable locked into place in his spine. He straightened, inch by painful inch, until he stood at his full height. The crowd nearest to him fell silent first, then the silence spread outward like ripples on water, until even Marcus looked up from his shame. Frank walked. Each step was a small war against time and injury, against the shrapnel still embedded in his hip from a mortar strike in Vietnam, against the stroke that had stolen half his strength 2 years ago. But he walked. Claire reached for him once, then let her hand fall away. There are moments when you cannot save someone from their purpose. The crowd parted without being asked. People stepped back instinctively, creating a corridor between the old man and the young cadet who stood trembling at the center of the memorial. Frank's shoes scraped against the pavement with each shuffling step, but his eyes never wavered from Marcus. When he finally reached the honor guard formation, he stopped. The silence was so complete that birds seemed to have stopped singing. "Son," Frank said, his voice rough as gravel but steady as bedrock. "May I?" Marcus stared at him, then at the rifle in his hands, then back at the old man who seemed to have materialized from another era entirely. Something in Frank's eyes, something vast and knowing, made him nod. He extended the rifle with shaking hands. Frank took it, and the world changed. The transformation was instantaneous and impossible. The trembling old man vanished, replaced by someone else entirely. His spine straightened further. His shoulders rolled back. The rifle, which had seemed so unwieldy in Marcus's young hands, became an extension of Frank's body. He adjusted his grip with minute precision, positioning his fingers with the certainty of someone who had held this particular weight 1,000 times before. Then he spun it. The rifle whipped through the air so fast it blurred. Frank's hands moved in patterns that seemed to defy physics, the weapon dancing between them like it was weightless. He tossed it high, and while it rotated above him, once, twice, 3 times, he executed a sharp pivot. The rifle descended. He caught it behind his back without looking, then brought it forward in a perfect arc that ended with the barrel pointed skyward. In the traditional position of respect, the crowd erupted. Not politely, not with measured appreciation. They roared. They clapped and whistled and called out with raw emotion. Elderly veterans in the crowd straightened in their seats, their own bodies remembering what Frank's body was showing them. Young people pulled out phones, capturing, but also simply staring, transfixed by this exhibition of muscle memory that had outlived the muscles themselves. But Frank wasn't finished. He glanced at Marcus, then at the other cadets, then back at the rifle in his hands. Without a word, he began the full routine. not a simplified version, not an adaptation for his age, the full, complete honor guard ceremony. He moved through the positions with meticulous precision, each movement crisp and exact, each transition flowing into the next like water. His hands, those arthritic, trembling hands, became instruments of grace. At one point, during a particularly complex maneuver, Frank tossed the rifle straight up. It climbed impossibly high, rotating slowly against the morning sky. And there, in that suspended moment while the rifle hung in the air, Frank did something no one expected. He extended his right hand, index finger pointing straight up. The rifle descended, still spinning, and he let it land balanced on that single finger. The rifle's center of gravity found that precise point, and for 3 full rotations, it spun there, balanced on nothing but an old man's steady hand and unshakable will. Time stopped. Breath stopped. The entire world seemed to pause and bear witness. Then Frank caught the rifle in both hands, snapped it to his shoulder in the final salute position, and stood perfectly still. His chest heaved with the effort. Sweat ran down his temples, but his hands didn't shake, not once. Not until it was over. The applause that followed was different than before, deeper, more reverent. People weren't just clapping for a performance. They were acknowledging something sacred, the living bridge between past and present, the proof that honor doesn't fade. It just waits for the right moment to remind us it's still there. Frank turned to Marcus and extended the rifle. The young cadet took it with new hands, hands that now understood what they were holding. Not just a piece of metal, not just a prop for a ceremony, but a legacy, a promise, a torch that gets passed not through instruction manuals, but through moments like this. It's not about being perfect, Frank said quietly. It's about honoring what came before you. Respect the weight. Let it guide you. Your hands know more than you think. Marcus nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Frank's hand came to rest briefly on the young man's shoulder, a benediction, a transfer of something more than technique. Then Claire was there, sliding back under her father's arm, helping him turn toward the wheelchair. Frank's body had begun to shake again, the adrenaline fading, the pain flooding back in. But his face wore an expression of profound peace. As Claire guided him back through the crowd, people reached out, not to stop him, but to touch his arm, his hand, his shoulder. Small gestures of connection and gratitude. A veteran in the front row stood and saluted as Frank passed. Then another stood. Then another. Within seconds, every veteran in the plaza was on their feet, hands raised to their temples. Even the young honor guards snapped to attention, their own salutes precise now, purposeful, transformed by what they had just witnessed. Marcus and his squad completed the ceremony 15 minutes later. They didn't drop the rifle. Again, their movements weren't perfect, but they were real, authentic, infused with new understanding. After the ceremony ended, Marcus approached Frank's wheelchair. He stood there for a moment, uncertain, then finally spoke. "Sir, thank you. I don't know what else to say." Frank looked up at him, and for a moment his eyes held that same sharpness. "You don't have to say anything, son. Just remember, that's all any of us can do. Remember, and carry it forward. Because honor doesn't fade with age or vanish with trembling hands. It waits, patient and eternal, for the moment when someone needs to be shown what it really looks like. And sometimes, if we're lucky, we get to witness an old warrior rise one more time to show us that the truest battles aren't fought with weapons, but with the simple act of passing something precious forward. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more tales that remind us what really matters, hit that subscribe button. Until next time, remember, the greatest honors are never claimed. They're quietly carried and generously shared.